Welcome to IB Unplugged, a Kognity podcast for IBDP educators that tackles your submitted challenges and questions by connecting you with experts and peers who share their ideas and stories from real classrooms. Whether you're a seasoned educator or new to the IB world, each biweekly episode and guest aims to equip you with practical tips and positive inspiration, helping you teach with more confidence, creativity, and joy. So whether you're walking your dog or commuting to school, hit play and join a community of educators ready to learn, laugh, and thrive in your IB journey.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to this bonus episode of IB Unplugged, which we are hosting in celebration of International Women's Day.
We are definitely excited today because we're going to get a chance to talk with a couple of different people at Kognity, and we're going to be talking with women there and their experiences, their ideas, advice they might have for ways in which we can create more inclusive environments, helping us show up for ourselves and for others and help to advocate for women all throughout the educational realm.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this episode. The way that it'll work is John and I split up a few different interviews with our colleagues at Kognity, and we're going to talk to Catalina, our producer, finally get her in front of the camera. We're going to talk with Maya. She's a world record holder and is going to talk about her experiences there and all kinds of really great stories to share with you all. So hope you enjoy the episode, and let's get started. Hi, Thori. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, Courtney. Thank you for having me.
So Thori is a product designer at Kognity, really working in the tech and product space. And in this field, despite progress, we still see low female representation. Were there any cultural hurdles that you faced when you were entering the tech space? And how do you feel like these experiences shaped your approach to your work today?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think it really first became apparent in university. I went to college around the time that there was like a huge push for women in STEM and, women entering kind of engineering and science fields, which was great. But in my classes, out of 200 students, it'd often be just a handful of women. And that kind of really shaped me because it was really interesting material we were learning, but we were so few, and we became like a kind of core group and really kind of supported each other. So it really was a core group of girls that I studied with throughout university. And especially having female TAs, teaching assistants, or professors, that always really boosted me being able to see myself in that field. I mean, representation isn't the only thing that matters, but being able to see someone, a role model that kind of is inhabiting a space that you're interested in moving towards, that's really impactful. And I think that has really shaped me today, being a mentor and an ally to more junior colleagues or women and non-binary folks who want to kind of enter into the tech space and really, be not a gatekeeper, but a gate opener, I would say, to kind of getting into the space.
I want to dive into that piece about mentorship, because I think that that's something really important. We have obviously mostly teachers and educators that are listening into this podcast. You're really involved in mentoring women and non-binary individuals that are looking to enter this space. Why do you think that it's critical to move beyond just general networking or kind of these open spaces to really create specifically safe ones where they can discuss topics and challenges that are unique to their experience in what is still a male-dominated field?
I think it's so important to just kind of build bridges and deep connections. I think that's really how I move through the world is I love to connect deeply with folks. And as a designer, it's something I get to do as part of my work. But I think just as humans, it's really important that you have a group of peers, trusted individuals that you can really confide in and vent to when needed, but also get kind of advice and kind of encouragement when that is needed as well. So I think it's really important to kind of move beyond the surface level and really get into the nitty gritty and kind of see how we can be there for each other and really nurture a welcoming space. I think it means a lot to just kind of open it up and make it more possible for folks to join.
No, I think that that's great. And I think that's really important work to show that's available for people who might feel quite alone, depending where they are in the world, what kind of context they have. So I think that's fantastic. I want to dive a bit into your work at Kognity. You're not just doing graphic design, you're doing user experience design. So you're really shaping the product and kind of building it in a way that works with the desired experiences of the teachers and the students. How do you feel that a diverse engineering team, a diverse product team, one that includes women and non-binary perspectives, how do you think that this can lead to better, more inclusive products and really being able to design for a global classroom?
Such an important question. I mean, if we think about the Kognity product, it's being used all around the world in diverse classroom settings, as you mentioned. And, tech is not something neutral. Like, it is very much built by humans. And so we are kind of imparting our fingerprint on that, and our kind of ideas and our experiences we really bring into that work. So it's super important that we have diverse teams that represent a wide swath of experiences and different perspectives, because that ultimately will create a product that works for a more diverse group of users. And I think it's also just more fun. And I'm really proud of Kognity and how they really pioneer diverse recruitment. And it's just a fun workplace to be in. And it makes the product as well so much stronger.
That's great. And yeah, Thori, thank you so much for joining today. It's been a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you so much. I totally echo that. We're all in this together. Thank you so much for having me.
Hi, Maya. Welcome to IB Unplugged. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So Maya is our VP of Product at Kognity, and she's been with us for 5 years. But before that, she is actually a world record holder for playing in the highest altitude football match ever on the top of Mount Kilimanjaro with the Equal Playing Field nonprofit, whose aim is to challenge gender inequality in sports and promote sports development for girls globally. So I want to talk a little bit about this. One, because it's really cool. And two, I think it fits really nicely with the theme today. And what about the mission of this organization really resonated with you? And what made you decide to do this?
I mean, to start with, I love mountains and I love hiking. So getting the opportunity to climb Kilimanjaro is just like a dream come true to me. And then secondly, I love challenges. No one has ever played football on that altitude, and not even our physicians knew what would actually happen to the body and if we would make it or not. So just being a part of that was also amazing. But then lastly, and probably most importantly, even though I've been fortunate enough to grow up in Sweden, which compared to other countries is pretty well on the equity side, I've been constantly faced with questions about women's ability to play football when I was young. And knowing that girls and women across the world is facing that attitude and getting questioned if they are strong enough to actually do sports in general, getting the chance to provide evidence that really women being able to do something like this felt really good.
Yeah. And you were able to do it. It did work. The physicians are happy.
Yes, it did work. We had one girl who actually fainted during the game, who was running a bit too much and getting oxygen failure, but she was okay, so it was good. And we managed to play the entire game, 11v11, 2 times 45 minutes up on really high altitude.
Amazing. Congratulations. On that second part of the mission of this organization, I want to tie that to your work now. The podcast is mainly for secondary school educators. Of course, you work at Kognity, you build the product for secondary schools, and sports are a huge part of many girls' lives at this age. Do you have any advice or reflections to give on how to really create these equal spaces in schools for them?
I think sports is one part of this, but this actually goes more or less for anything that's done in education, I think. Mm-hmm. So more or less the human race stands out in our ability to carry cultural knowledge between generations. Like we do this by following patterns from others that we identify with. And education is really a place where we can impact the expectation of what kids see with themselves, but also with others. So I don't think this is just about representation in the examples, about how we talk about things, but mainly like the way we talk about it. So what words are we using? Are we saying Women's World Cup and not Men's World Cup, for example? And I think I really appreciate a good like glass roof smashing story about women who've done something in a male dominated field and being the first one doing it. But that story shouldn't fit together with explaining a scientific concept, for example. That should be a different story. So just making sure that we talk about women and their successes everywhere in a way where it's a part of how it should be and not as an expectation.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think, like you said, in the school, it's about how you frame things. One example that I was thinking about as I talked to an athletic director who insisted on at their school, it was always football and girls football, basketball and girls basketball. And so they made it this conscious choice of anytime they talked about the sport, anytime it was written, it was always boys basketball as well. And it's like these small intentional things that then normalize equality, and it doesn't make the girls the other. So yeah, I think that that's really important. I think that both of us have daughters. Is there anything that you hope to see from based on kind of your experience working that you hope is setting the tone and setting kind of a role model for your daughters that you hope will kind of lead on into the way that they live their lives and think about things?
I think one of the things that I really want to carry on to my kids is looking at what they want to become and focus on that and their dream, and not always fall into the trap of taking care of others and making sure others' dream are coming true, but really like taking the place for what they want themselves and work with that.
Beautiful. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Maya. We're going to meet some other people from the team, and I really appreciate you taking the time to answer these questions.
Thank you. Thanks again for having me.
Hi, Sasha. Welcome to IB Unplugged. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, John.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about what you're up to these days. I know that you made a transition. You were an educator, an administrator in an IB school. Now you're in the ed tech world. How'd you decide to pivot into administration and then to go corporate, as they would say?
Well, actually, my journey wasn't really a straightforward one. So yes, I did start out my career as an IB history teacher at an international school in New York. And while I really loved teaching, of course, I was kind of ready to shift into a more like school-wide role. And so this new admin role came up. It was called the Director of Experiential Learning, brand new role. And I thought, yes, this is for me, like I was quite young at the time, and I was like, yeah, I'm ready to kind of get into the admin side of things. Very, very fun, interesting, but extremely challenging role. As you know, like brand new admin role, you're having to kind of change the culture. So this was around like our SEL programs, advisory, and then like, experiential learning opportunities outside of the classroom learning. And so it was a really great opportunity, really fun. But then the pandemic hit in 2020.
And experiential learning shifted entirely, didn't it?
Yes, exactly. So, my school did not really need director of experiential learning in those early days of the pandemic when we were all shifting online. And so my role was one of the first to be made redundant. And, it was quite a devastating thing for me, to be honest. But actually, in the end, it was like the best thing that could have happened to me. And it kind of provided this opportunity for that transition into tech. So my school used Kognity, actually. And one of my colleagues was already a trainer for Kognity and advised me to apply. So I applied. This was in 2020, so 6 years ago. I was interviewed by Courtney, who's now my manager, And and the rest is history. So went from being a trainer to now managing the team of trainers. But I would say it wasn't something that, like, I always knew I wanted to kind of leave the classroom and branch out into other roles within education, but I could not really have foreseen myself in the role I'm in now. But I'm like beyond happy. It just was one of those serendipitous pivots that just worked out for the best for me. So
just got to kind of keep your ear to the ground and see when those possibilities come up, right? And be like, well, this is the next move. Well, I'm glad it's worked out for you so far.
Thank you.
Now, I mean, obviously we're talking International Women's Day, and it's a great time to talk about that return to work journey. And I know, for women, for many women, coming back after having children feels like almost like a second debut. Like, hey, I'm back now. Talk to me about how your perspective on your career maybe changed after becoming a mom.
So I really appreciate this question because it's one that is very important to me, of course, very dear to my heart. I would say absolutely returning to work was definitely a second debut in a very challenging yet incredible way. So, as any mother knows, after you have your baby, you're on maternity leave and you're kind of thrown into this completely new world where you're learning a lot of new things about yourself. You're almost having like an existential identity crisis. That's kind of how I described it. Like learning to care for, the most precious thing in the world to you. And so you go from kind of being in this bubble. And I was quite lucky myself to I had 10 months maternity leave, and then I was able to go back to work part-time after that. And Kognity was extremely supportive actually in that journey. So I feel quite lucky in that way. But nonetheless, I mean, coming back was extremely challenging because you feel like you're going back kind of into this old life of yours, but you don't really feel like it's you anymore. Like you're this new person. So you're having to kind of try and do these mental shifts where, you go from, I'm dropping my daughter off at nursery in the morning and then I'm coming to work and just trying to kind of navigate that. But I think, although it was quite hard at first, I feel like I developed these kind of superpowers where I now am able to really context shift very well. So you kind of go from, in the morning, for whatever reason, my daughter didn't sleep well that night. So you're exhausted and you're dealing with a meltdown maybe in the morning or playing some elaborate fantasy game. And then, you go right into work and, you're doing maybe like developing programs, doing customer calls, maybe like presenting at a meeting. And I think now I'm really able to like have that context shift a lot better, which just kind of makes me, I think, a more agile worker, but also in life as well. And so I really do think that's a superpower of working moms and like being able to prioritize things much better, kind of bring a lot more energy, for the most part, not always. And then I also think like being in education as well and having a daughter, it's kind of given me this newfound appreciation for what I do and like the privilege of being in education and really working to support, student and teacher success. It's much dearer to my heart because I have a daughter and that's, I want the same for her. So, I think coming back was truly my second debut and started out hard, but I think that I've really been able to find a good balance that, I'm happy with.
Yeah. I absolutely know what you mean when you talk about that sort of compartmentalization bit, right? I need to be all the way 100% here with my daughter, and then I need to be, 100% here in this new space. And that timing can be, 1 to 2 minutes sometimes or less than that. Sometimes you get a text while you're working, you're like, this is going on and I need to be 100% here versus there. So yeah, I absolutely understand what you mean there. And, I guess you're kind of alluding to this idea that I think, parenthood, and I guess in many cases motherhood, maybe changes the way that you think about your career. And I know for me, it definitely did with education. When I became a father, I thought very differently about what I get to do in the education space. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, one, I guess in your role, how has that maybe shifted or maybe impacted the way that you approach your career? Or I guess, does your definition of success look different now with motherhood?
I think for me right now, and this could change because I'm still quite early in the motherhood journey, like my daughter's 2. But I think that, the definition of success in my career right now is kind of that balance, because again, you do have to context shift, but this is my full life. And I think to me, being able to come into work, I find myself in some ways even to be more creative than I was before, even a better problem solver than I was before. And so being able to kind of bring those skills to work and bring that energy to work. And then, as I was saying, go home. I mean, I work remotely, but, leave my office, go back into my home space and be a mother and deal with, the highs and the lows of being a parent. To me, in this part of my life with a young daughter, that is my definition of success in my career is that balance and coming to work and being excited about what I'm doing, which I am. I really love the projects I'm working on. I love kind of the creativity and freedom I get in my role. And I love working with our teachers, supporting our schools and our students. To me, bringing that kind of joy to work in that balance that I have, I would say at this moment in time is my definition of success.
Yeah, I like that. And I love, because you're alluding to something here that I think is really important for all educators, but especially anybody who's kind of coming back into work after, having a child. And I know that you work closely with educators, and in many cases, educators might be facing burnout. A lot of educators kind of go through that anyway. And I know statistically, female teachers carry a significant portion of emotional labor in schools. I can think about at our school, for example, a lot of our students prefer to open up to some of our female colleagues. And I guess now that you're on the tech side, how do you ensure that Cognity's customer success strategies actually reduce that burden for mothers and educators rather than just maybe adding another tool to their plate?
Yes, I think this is so important being in tech because, being a teacher, I would say of being a teacher, being an administrator, and then working in tech, the most exhausted I ever felt was being a teacher. I would say hands down, that was the most challenging and in many ways the most rewarding role that I had, working directly with students. But as you say, that brings a lot of emotional labor and can be quite exhausting. And the idea of tech in schools is that it's supposed to make your life easier. It's supposed to make teaching easier. And I think that one thing that tech can fail at sometimes is that it actually doesn't. It does in some ways pile onto your plate. You have, all these new products you can choose from, having to have a bunch of different logins and learning how to use each one and how it can support your success. And I think that one thing I do in my customer success role is when you're working with a school or you're working with teachers, the most important thing I think is to meet the school and meet teachers where they're at. So we do a lot of work up front before we go in to train teachers in a school on understanding what are the needs of that school, even down to the teacher. What are the pain points of that school? And how can we support? So we do a lot of that prep work beforehand by asking the school questions, talking to the account managers as well. So working with other parts of our commercial team before we go into train so that we're okay, this is the Kognity platform. There's many different features on here that can support you in your teaching. What do you need? What can we, how can we draw from the platform to support you and where you're at? So it's not just a one size fits all approach. We might highlight for some schools, how to create and send assignments and how to use that data. We might highlight for some schools how to incorporate it into your lesson planning and how to use the content in the classroom. So there's a lot of different features you can take from the platform. And I think that that's something that I really love about my role, is really getting into a school, trying to understand what they need so that my team, we can really support them in where they're at.
And I guess then effectively kind of give them that space to be that emotional sort of, well, not that person who can look after the emotional well-being of young people in better ways, right? Because then there's certain elements of the platform that kind of take heavier parts of the legwork of teaching, and then now you can do that more relational side and do that really quite well, yeah?
I mean, 100%. I think that is ultimately what an edtech product should be. It's like to remove those, like, the admin side, the organization, the grading part, like removing those kind of aspects so that the teacher can really get down and focus on what matters most, which, as you're saying, is the teaching, is the supporting of the students. And we are like the support system that helps them achieve that.
Sasha, it's so great getting to chat with you a little bit and talk about, what you get to do here at Kognity. And I really appreciate your perspectives that you're bringing here, because both from the educator standpoint, but also recognizing, as a mother in that space and coming back into, kind of that professional realm, how do you compartmentalize these things? How do you give 100% to each of them? And then it's clear that the work that you're doing now helps to, inspire and motivate other people who are in that same position so that they can do some great work with young people. Thanks so much for taking the time and for chatting with us today.
Thank you, John. It was great to meet you and great to be here.
Becoming a better IBDP educator is a daily practice informed through reading, research, personal experience, and episodes from IB Unplugged, like the one you are listening to right now. But sometimes the show can go a bit too quickly, or we can simply forget some of the key points once we are out of the car or back from our walk and in the office preparing for our next lesson. That's why it's easy to download the episode summary at kognity.com/IB Unplugged. Simply navigate to today's episode and click Free Summary to receive a condensed summary of today's episode, including links to other sources and other exciting bits of information you can use immediately in your daily practice. It's free and it helps. Now, back to the show. Yes, Katie, welcome to the other side of the camera. How does it feel?
I don't love it, but here we are. Some of us are just meant to be behind the microphone and the camera quite happily. But for this day, I'll make an exception.
That's right. Yeah, no, I appreciate you doing so. I mean, you obviously oversee the full life cycle of IB Unplugged. Everything from, booking our guests, securing who's going to be on the show, and of course, afterward, the production aspect of that as well. And I know you do a ton with conferences, events, and webinars, and boot camps, and you kind of do a lot of different things. You have a significant hand in deciding whose stories and expertise we're going to be amplifying to reach our global audience. So talk to us about how you use your role to ensure that diverse female voices and perspectives in the IB community are the ones being amplified.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it's kind of my favorite part of the job. We at Kognity have been able to work with schools all around the world, and with that, people with various backgrounds, gender expressions, ethnicities, things like that. And I think it's really important that we are able to intentionally represent all of the fantastic people that we get to work with. And so I think it kind of starts with that, like really making sure that we are celebrating all of the people that we get to work with. And a big part of that is working with fantastic women in schools all around the world. So I think that it kind of starts with just that intentionality to begin with. And I think the second piece there is also like authentically representing people. So it's not just about filling quotas or things like that. It's about having various different experiences and perspectives that are shared within that as well. So of course, as women, we have different experiences and backgrounds and everything. So it's making sure that is represented within that too. And Courtney and I have worked a lot on this together over the years. And so I'd be curious to hear if you have anything to add to that.
I agree completely. And I think that it's really easy to just dismiss it as like, oh, I just found the people to fill the conference, the speaking agenda, for example. But I think that it's that intentionality piece, I guess, to dive in a little bit, is if you're hosting an event and you go on LinkedIn and you type IB coordinator and math examiner, odds are the first people to come up are going to be men. that doesn't mean that there are women that are not as qualified, but there is just, for so many complex reasons, the easy, fastest solution usually ends up being a ticket full of male speakers. But because it's a priority for us to say how many different perspectives can we have on this theme or however we're shaping it, it really does mean that you're putting in the extra mile, but you're not getting less quality. If anything, you're getting a richer and more full-bodied perspective on whatever themes you're trying to tackle in your events.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think one of the things as well that comes with that is that it's a continuous process. You don't start from the beginning saying, we're going to be intentional about this. We're going to be authentic about it. It's something that you work with continuously and have had to keep that at the forefront of when we are creating these things. And so it's something that we, continuously work with as well.
So it sounds like you kind of root yourself in the theme and what's the main idea that we're really trying to get across with this project, with this episode, with this show, whatever it might be. And then just, take the time to kind of weed through who are all the possible people here. And I recognize there's tons of different variables that play into who might be an available speaker. But ultimately, it sounds like let's get the right person that can speak on this theme in an authentic and genuine way that's really going to impact people in a positive way as well. Now, I know that, you lead the planning, the execution of a lot of major projects in the company. And I know at times the majority of stakeholders are men who are also older or maybe more experienced. That's an air quote there for our listeners than you. So talk to me about advice that you would give to other women in terms of, stepping into that space.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that has taken me some time to kind of find my own footing in. I think something along the line that became clear to me was really owning what experiences I am bringing to the table and my perspective and everything that makes me who I am. And a part of that is being a woman, and a part of that is many other things. And also like celebrating those things within myself and knowing that when I am getting a seat at the table, or we are having a certain discussion, or we're having a meeting about whatever, X, Y, and Z, that I am bringing something to that with my voice as well. And I think that just like that was something that really just took me some time to figure out and to celebrate in myself as well. So I think it's just has been a kind of continuous reflection that I've had, how I want to show up with my team and in the workplace. And again, to bring it back, just like being quite intentional about that as well. Yeah. It's been my experience.
Yeah. And I think that's something that I've seen with you over the years, because I've had a pleasure of working with Katie for a long time now, is there's never been an attempt to try to overcompensate or try to show off, like, I know what I'm doing because I've done this, this, and this. It's a really genuine confidence that you've built up where, one, you're still extremely humble and receptive and ready to listen to everyone else's perspectives in a way that I think is really important, that sometimes is easy to forget if you feel like you are the most experienced person in the room. Like, you really are good at listening to everyone else's ideas and pulling them in and things like that. And I think that it's about knowing your worth, and you know your worth. You know what you've been able to accomplish and the kind of really impressive things that you've been able to achieve at your time in Kognity. And you can bring all that to the table without feeling like you have to start a meeting with like a CV reading of like, this is why you need to listen to me. It's a confidence that I think comes through very organically.
No, thank you so much. But I think that was maybe something that I had felt myself kind of in the beginning as well, because not only, I mean, I think working with Kognity was also my first kind of post-university job experience. So I also remember feeling those first few, I don't know, maybe even the first year, maybe first few years, feeling that I needed to show up in a way that wasn't who I am and wasn't true to the experiences that I've had. And so I think something that also happened along the way was just removing a little bit of that feeling and just going about everything with like a curiosity, asking questions, being okay not to know everything, and but also trusting that when you do have an opinion, say it. And maybe sometimes you're wrong, or maybe you're, and just being open to that too, I think has really allowed me to be a lot more present and then be able to learn a lot more because of it.
I love that. You kind of getting on this idea, I guess, of like imposter syndrome. And I know, Courtney, you've spoken about this a lot and feeling strongly about wanting to fight the normalization of imposter syndrome. And I guess, first off, what do you mean by the normalization of that? Mm-hmm. And then why is that important directly in connection with female empowerment?
So I think that one of the most important things when you're talking to women and female leaders and things like that is really making sure that, are you approaching them the same way that you're approaching a man in like interviews is such an easy example here, where it's so often that women are asked about their imposter syndrome before they've even said if they had it or not. Like, it's like, you're a woman in leadership. Of course you have imposter syndrome. And you make that assumption before the female leader has even brought it up. And so then it creates a dynamic where if that woman doesn't have imposter syndrome, then does it put her in a position where she needs to defend why she feels confident about the position that she's already worked for? And I think that then you start, at least for me, I could say, in my normal position at Kognity, I don't have imposter syndrome because I really put in the work to get there and I built it up and all of that, and something that I feel quite proud of. But if somebody immediately asks me how I cope with imposter syndrome, it's like then I start spiraling about, well, if I say I don't have it, then I might sound too cocky and I might sound overconfident. And then you get in your head about it. And where my male counterparts, most of the time, they wouldn't even be asked that question to begin with. So there's no defense or spiral that they kind of have to go through to balance being aware of their achievements and not coming off as too arrogant or anything like that. So I think it's just really thinking about, are we asking the same questions and what is the impact of those questions?
Mm-hmm. So talk to me now, like, what do we do with that? How do we almost eliminate the idea of imposter syndrome and just celebrate people's strengths for how they come into whatever space, regardless of their identity?
I think that it's really important to be mindful about the questions that you ask, but then it's also about really making sure that this is a safe dialogue, not just for the women, but also for everybody, for all of the allies. I think one thing that's really risky about calling microaggressions is that it makes it sound aggressive. And at least in my experience, I work with fantastic men that are not ever intentionally making these comments or asking these questions in a different way. But I feel really comfortable in the spaces that I've been able to be in where we can have that conversation and they also will speak up about it. I mean, anything from I have a vegetarian colleague and we go to the restaurant and every time he orders the vegetarian menu and I order like a giant steak, they always give him the steak, me the salad. There's these small things that I'm not offended. It's just there's always going to be these moments where people make assumptions. Yeah. Some of them are a little trickier than assuming he makes a steak. But when you have the conversation in the open space where you're not on the defensive. Yeah. You're not on the offensive, but you're instead creating a conversation where everyone can learn. That's where I think that the growth comes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is, like, what it comes down to, and everything that you just said is like taking responsibility to understand our own biases. We all have them. We all have them. And I think working with them openly and actively with each other is like the only way we're going to push things forward.
So then talk to me about how you think female leadership has evolved, and especially most positively, maybe in the last decade or two. What are the ways you've seen it really come into a more representative, inclusive space?
I think that as more women have been able to break the glass ceiling, get into leadership, in the beginning, those kind of pioneer women got into a space where being female was something that kind of took away from their innate, and I put this in air quotes, innate leadership. So they felt almost like they had to mimic what was a stereotypical masculine, again, lots of air quotes here for those of you not watching, way of leadership that made it that almost like the female leaders felt like they needed to be even more traditionally masculine than the masculine leaders.
Yep.
Instead of looking at it from there's a spectrum of different ways of leading and different kind of traits that you want to really highlight in yourself. And I think that there's really this spectrum of leadership that has what are some kind of traditionally masculine, traditionally feminine traits. And I think that now we're in a space where there isn't one type of leadership. And we've seen that there's a lot of different things that can kind of go into successful leadership that isn't just this one style.
Yeah.
And instead, women can feel like they can show up to their roles authentically and not trying to fit a mold that really only fit one, not even all men, but like one specific style that everyone was trying to get after.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, so kind of our vision of what leaders are, what they look like, is expanding. And I think that's probably a really good thing then, that we can recognize all the strengths and positive qualities that anybody can bring into that realm of leadership. And it doesn't just have to fit this one idea, right? Thank you both for taking the time. It's fun to chat with you on this side of the camera here, Katie. I appreciate you coming over here. And
it probably won't happen again, but it was fun.
No, come on. I'll talk to our producer. We'll see if we can get you on this side again. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much. We appreciate it. Hi, Anna. Welcome to IB Unplugged. Thanks so much for joining us.
John, it's so nice to meet you. It feels like I'm meeting a celebrity.
No. Definitely don't do that. My head's too big to get through the room anyway.
Sounds good.
Let's dive in a little bit. And obviously, we're talking International Women's Day. And you have a specific role at Kognity where it's in people operations. I understand there's lots of things that you're doing there with regard to kind of human resource and supporting different departments. And you mentor leaders across the company. Talk to me about some of the common strengths and challenges you've seen, particularly in female leadership.
Ooh, this is such a good question. And I think really when I was reflecting on this, something that is such a strength is oftentimes when I'm stepping into these dialogues, the leaders have such a high standard for the work that they want to put out there, that they want attached with their name. And there is a level of I think pride can have a negative connotation, but in this specific case, they just want to make sure what is being done is the best work possible. And that is something that I just admire from them tremendously. And on the other side, in those same dialogues, something that I see and I try to flag with them. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term hedging language.
No, not much. I don't use that too much in my biology lessons. No.
Makes sense. I won't pretend to know anything about mitosis then. So for the hedging language, sometimes it's when people say, okay, this may be a silly concept, or maybe this is a stupid idea, right before they're going in and even saying what maybe they're confident about or sure about, they're already prefacing it with some language to package it in a different way. And sometimes this can become quite habitual. And I think similar to when someone uses like or quite a bit, it's a habit that we build, but it can be quite harmful because what it's signaling is I myself might not be sure about what I'm about to say. And maybe you are super sure about what you're trying to say. So really trying to work with leaders that you don't have to come with ideas and start with, I'm not sure if this is the right approach. We can just talk about ideas and then let's figure it out together if it is the right approach. So those were two of the things that I thought of specifically to this.
Nice. Well, what do we do about that? Because just as you mentioned, you've got a lot of strength in great ideas that somebody's taken a lot of time to develop, and they've put a lot of work into it. Just as you said, one of the greatest strengths is really working through some good stuff. What do we do about like how to present that in such a way to say like, I know what I've got here is good. How do I bring that to the table in a better way?
Yeah, and I think this kind of touches upon language is how it shows up. But another reflection that I've had with these leaders is sometimes there's this feeling of they make some amazing work, they produce some amazing work, but then they feel it's not yet good enough. And it's a little bit different than imposter syndrome of, do I have a space at the table? It's, did I do that the best way that I could have done it? And almost being self-critical on their own work. And so a way to start combating this is one, making sure that it's self-reflection, not self-critiquing in our internal dialogue, but then externally when we're showing up, honestly trying to work on the habit, similar to limiting language with ums or like or filler words at times. If that's something that you want to improve in public speaking, it's working on not having this hedging language when you're presenting ideas or talking with a team. So really more of that habit building, but I think it's very much so connected to an internal dialogue that leaders have within themselves, where they might be falling into self-critiquing instead of self-reflection. And for me, a test that I run when I fall into this is when I'm thinking about something that happened previously, am I looking at it to learn something, or am I actually just sitting here and pointing out everything that I think I did wrong? And that helps me then drive a dialogue within myself about stopping, reflecting, and then moving forward.
Well, what I'm hearing there is it also sounds like there's an element of kind of creating a trusting space for when we're creating those dialogues, right? So whether I'm presenting an idea or if somebody is presenting an idea into a leadership group or something like this, there's got to be an element of trust throughout the group that isn't there to just let's cut down every idea that's here, but rather a sort of collaboration. So what I'm hearing is even if an idea or a thought or something like this isn't completely at 100%, feeling like I'm in a safe enough space that when I present it, that we're going to workshop that together. We're going to come up with something in a good way that will take whatever idea I've had here and then add in the collaborative process to make it way better than any one individual could. Is there a space here for then the people around us, whether, more women in leadership, men in leadership, whatever it might be, to just emphasize we need to have safe, trusting work environments so that great ideas can actually flourish?
Yes, I think so. And it sounds so cheesy what I'm going to say and not revolutionary whatsoever, but I think there's two ways to think of that. One is really allowing there to be space to listen. If people feel that they have the opportunity to ensure that they feel heard and understood, then that is creating a safe environment. And the second is actually having an environment where, and I think we hear a lot about this at least in my world of people ops, creating a safe environment where people feel that failures or mistakes are celebrated or it's not seen as a negative thing. And that, I think, in practice can be a lot more difficult to do, but with leaders themselves and other leaders, it's actually demonstrating and showing up and telling people of their own mistakes and things that have happened for them that didn't go as well. And that is my biggest advice. I think even when leaders are talking about their own team, that people are feeling nervous, I'm like, share about the times that something happened to you this week or mistakes that you've made. And that will make an environment where they can say, oh, I can share that too. it's okay for us to admit that we are not perfect 24/7. So really listening and building this environment, but building it by demonstrating these own behaviors ourselves.
I love that. And especially, with my educator hat on, I'm seeing how much we can develop that in young people that, we talk about a lot on the show. Mistakes are the best way to be learning and not something to be feared. And failure is actually a super important piece of character development and that sort of thing. So, when I think of growing young people and helping them develop into then getting into professional roles and more leadership roles, if they've got a really rooted sense of my failures and mistakes are super important and not something to be feared, then maybe there's more confidence in bringing that to the professional realm as well. Yeah,
definitely.
Now, throughout your career, I know that you've been able to do all sorts of cool stuff, and especially in your leadership role. I'm interested, who were some of the women that maybe paved the way for you, or women that really inspired you and helped you kind of get on to the path you're in now?
I have always bragged a little bit because in my career, I have never, knocking on all the wood right now, had a leader that I didn't absolutely admire and think that they had done a phenomenal job, especially my direct leaders. And they all just happened to be women, which I didn't realize until recently when I was kind of doing more of a reflection. And what really made them stand out is touching a little bit about what we just said, that listening piece. They always were quite open for me to share things and bring things to them. And then I always felt that I was actually talking with someone that cared about what I had to say. And the other piece, especially when I was starting out in my career, I have a tendency to not be as confident in my work, especially when I was younger. And they believed in me much earlier than I think that I believed in myself, and really helped me own things that, of course, were the right capacity and scope for my skill set at the time, but really allowed me to take things, own them, make mistakes, learn from them, and were there to support. So I think when I reflected on just all of those incredible direct leaders, it's the fact that they really made me feel that I had space and what I had to share is important, and that also I could own things and drive things forward before I even thought I was ready. And that at least is specific to career. And I'm quite close to my mom as well. She is one of my personal heroes. We moved to the US when I was quite young, when I was 3. And there was a lot of things in our lives that maybe weren't as positive or as light. And she always handles things with so much positivity and levity that I think how that shows up in the workplace is always trying to bring this positive outlook and thinking about getting through it with an outcome mindset instead of sitting in negativity. So I think I've been very fortunate, which I think has been incredible. But yeah, I didn't realize until lately. I was like, wow, they all actually happen to be women that have been my direct leaders.
And what you described there are just the excellent qualities of great leaders as well. This just listening carefully, caring about you, believing that you can do the things, and keeping that positive mindset regardless of the challenges that are up there. I think all those things you just described are, what we should all be aspiring to as good leaders. So I guess last question here. Now that you're in a position to influence the careers of others, what's one piece of advice you consistently give to young women who are starting their careers?
Ooh, yes, a piece of self-advice here. I talked about it already a little bit, but I think at least for my own personal journey, there was so many times where I sat there and ruminated on this could have been done better. I should have done this. I should have said this. I should have approached this differently. And it took me a really long time to realize how much energy, mental capacity that was taking away from other things. and really trying to reframe that is not self-care, that is not reflection, that is not wanting to improve, that is sitting in a very critical headspace. And that, I think, if I would have learned earlier, because I saw it as a benefit that I was so hard on myself. Diamonds are built under pressure. It's such a good thing that I have such a high bar, which is good, but the way I was approaching it and thinking about it was not from a place of care or wanting to improve. It was coming from a place of really sitting there and focusing on everything that hadn't gone well. So my advice is to, of course, learn and celebrate those mistakes, but move forward. That is the most important piece. Take what you need and then just start the journey ahead. And that is something that the earlier you learn it, I think there's so many benefits to it.
Yeah, reflect, don't ruminate. I like that.
Yeah.
Anna, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us today. Really, really appreciate your perspectives, and hope we get a chance to talk again soon on the show.
Yes, thank you so much.
IB Unplugged is a Kognity podcast hosted by John Patton and Courtney Marlene and produced by Catalina Gaffney. Be sure to subscribe or follow and share with your fellow IB educators. If you'd like to submit a topic, request, or question, please do so on kognity.com/IB Unplugged. Let's keep the conversation going and support each other in teaching with confidence, creativity, and joy. See you next time.